No, not this one, not this one. This one. Welcome to PowerDrift. That's the Oben Rorr. We're riding it today, and in this video, we'll tell you how it goes, how it stops, how it turns, and what it costs. Before we go ahead, you know what to do, right? All of these things. Thank you so much, and let's begin. The Oben Rorr, it was launched a couple of months ago. That is a first batch prototype. These will go to customers in end August, September, something like that. And the price we know is about 1 lakh rupees, including state and central subsidies. So obviously it will vary a little bit state to state. 1 lakh is what I remember as the Maharashtra number. Now, what it wants to do is approximate the performance and appeal of a 150cc class commuting motorcycle with a little bit of the extra jazz that electrics usually bring to the table. So when you go to the showroom with all of that information, see that motorcycle and think it's a lakh of rupees, are you going to be impressed? I'm going to say no. You're going to take a moment to think about it, because as striking as the motorcycle is, especially from this angle, the design is a little boxy. It wants to sort of be a near retro, and it sort of gets it right, but there are a lot of elements that need to be refined further so that the motorcycle appears more expensive than it is. However, it does seem to run well, so let's start now with what's under the skin.
Oben's tech is based on a lot of experience in working with EV R&D even before they began Oben as a company. They've used this to create a motorcycle that can do peak output of 10 kilowatts for the permanent magnet motor, and there's a 4.4 kilowatt hour battery pack. The promise is 100 kilometers an hour flat out and 150 kilometers of real world range. They say that their choice of the LFP battery, certain materials inside the battery pack, the structure of the battery pack, plus the monitoring and control mechanism allow them to do almost anything they want without the heat of the battery being the issue. That's also why they can run a 3 kilowatt charger that's part of the motorcycle. So you just pull the wire out of the panel on the tank and plug it into any 16 amp socket. 2 hours, that's a full charge. And once it's charged, it's time to go.
So the Oben Rorr organizes its performance into 3 riding modes. The base riding mode, which is where you start out at whenever you start the machine, is the eco mode, which is good for about 50 kilometers an hour. Above that is the normal mode, which they call city. Above that is the sport mode, which they're calling havoc. Now the base mode, the eco mode, has extremely gentle acceleration. The range is obviously the longest in eco mode, but top speed is about 50 kilometers an hour, which should be enough for you to be able to deal with city traffic, remaining in eco mode quite effectively. The best mode to ride in actually felt like the city mode, where the performance is a little bit easier. It gives off itself a little bit more calmly, and it's a little bit more pleasurable to ride, whereas eco actually feels like a little bit of work. That mode, 70 kilometers an hour, and if you want to go faster than that, remember this thing goes 100 kilometers an hour, you have to switch to havoc. However, while all the 3 modes have different regen settings, what they've done with havoc is they play with the power curve a little bit, so it pulls off from the bottom quite nicely, but by 60 kmph it's tapering the performance off a little bit. At 91 it feels almost like it gets stuck, but after that, if you keep at it and you've got enough road going on, then it will go to about 104 indicated before the power is actively being managed by the system. But given the fact that we're used to hyper and warp modes in the Ola and the Ather, this is not how we expected havoc mode to play out. We thought havoc would be all out performance, but it's more like a sport mode. Now remember, there is a little bit of calibration work still pending with the Rorr, because this machine is not very easy to ride as it is right now. It's a software fix, but it still has to be done. The problem is there are 3 systems which control the propulsion of this motorcycle. One obviously is the throttle, which is discharging the motor. One is the brake, which disconnects the motor. And then there is regen, which uses the retardation to try and charge the battery. How these 3 systems interact with each other, it's a little muddy, especially at small throttle openings, and that can make this motorcycle feel a little bit herky-jerky. What we were hoping for is an easy, pleasant experience, and like all the EVs that automatically disconnect the motor when you touch the brake, if you manage to slow down too much on an uphill U-turn, you're gonna get stuck.
If you ignore the glitches, there's a very slick experience in here. In all the modes, performance ranges from decent to smile-worthy, although I do think havoc mode is too gentle and needs to be amped up further. There's a lot of fun to be had riding the Rorr at higher speeds, because the handling keeps up. Oben uses a trellis-style frame with a box-action swing arm. It's a simple design, and the suspension and brake spec is pretty basic too. But Oben uses a sharp 23-degree rake with a long wheelbase to create a responsive package.
The nicest part about riding the Rorr is its handling. It's got a really long wheelbase but a really sharp rake, and together it feels very natural to throw into a corner. And what I really love about it is that despite the weight and heft of the battery pack, it feels nearly weightless. That I really enjoyed. The only thing that got in my way are the throttle calibrations, which prevent you from just flowing from corner to corner as you would on a well-tuned EV or on a great ICE. Where the problems start actually are ride quality and braking. On the right front, the front suspension is very nice and supple, but the rear feels almost sporty, and there is a mismatch that you will notice, especially over the sharpest bumps. That's something that could be tuned further. On the brakes, they're kind of wooden, so you can't really feel what you're doing. The front feels like you have to put in a lot of effort to slow down. The rear locks up a little bit too easily. More calibration work is required, and remember, these don't have ABS. None of these EVs have ABS, so it is critical that you get the brake feel right so that I can predict what it's going to do, and as of today, I can't.
In terms of features, this is a basic machine with an LCD display, Bluetooth, GPS and the app. The onboard charger, it's a big win for me in the sense that the Rorr is self-contained, unlike the scooters where you have to carry the charger in the trunk. Oben says it will have 9 dealers in 9 cities offering sales and service by August, when deliveries should start. Customers with bookings will also have a chance to take test rides very shortly. What they reiterate is that we were riding prototypes, hence the glitches, and on that front, the things that they said at the launch about the range, charging and performance, well, they're all in place, more or less. Oben is working on their second motorcycle too, which is likely to be a 100-125cc commuter class EV, and that's expected to show up February-ish next year. So let's sum this up.
So what do we think about the Oben Rorr? Well, the bones of a good electric motorcycle are certainly in there. But a lot of the throttle interactions that we struggle with today should be solvable because they're primarily software fixes. The other thing we'd obviously like to see is the final production form of this machine, because I think the finish, the fit, the build quality, all of that can improve significantly. But how does it make a promise as a 1 lakh rupee electric motorcycle going for the 150cc class? I think it makes a pretty decent promise as of today, but like I always say, we must test ride and decide. That's just a prototype. We'd like to see the final version before I tell you whether that's worth buying or not. A good promise has been made. Now I'd like to see it delivered.